Welcome everyone to the Reimagining Retail with design luminary Kevin Roche. It is now my pleasure to welcome to the stage PAVE President Jerry Fox. Jerry, will you please join me?
Please welcome Ms. Karen Pierce. Karen Pierce is the founder and CEO of Karen Pierce Global Direct, based in New York City, and her brand brings over 30 years of expertise in the stone and tile business.
Thank you, Jerry, for that wonderful introduction. And hello, and thank you so much for being with us today. And please help me welcome Kevin Roche to the stage.
Thank you, Karen, for this, and thank you, PAVE, for the invitation. Thank you for all of you who came out today in this very difficult time we're in. You know, I was thinking it was too bad that we couldn't have 100 people or more, but I really like this because it's much more intimate. And we titled this a conversation, so I hope to make it a conversation. Those of you who may know me or have been at a talk before, I can tend to just talk. Are you going to rehearse? No, I don't rehearse. I don't know how to rehearse. I just talk about what I feel and what I believe and what I think I've learned, and hopefully, that means something to you. So I encourage you to get involved in the question period. I used to, when I was on the client side, the first half of my career, helping build from 4 of us in 1975 to FRCH when I left, I used to be frustrated by the interviews. You go in and you have to do an interview to pitch a job, and they give you about an hour. And how do you tell them what you know or how you feel in about an hour, right? It's really hard. And then the second half of my career as a client, I never would limit that to about an hour. So I hope I have more to share based on the more questions you ask, right? And there are no questions off limits. So think about that, as we go through this. So as Karen said, my passion has been about design. And the context of this has been introduced. It's my entire career, 45 years now, since I graduated in 1975, has been focused on retail. I was in a class when a guy from Federated Department Stores came in and talked about store planning. I said, that's cool. I'd like to do that. And I interned at Federated ever since during the 5-6 years in school, and then interned at Bloomingdale's, and the rest is history. I've never looked up from this thing called retail. I wish it was a better word. I'll talk about that. So my entire career has been that. And what I really felt and developed is it's not so much about retail. I wish it was a better word, because when you use the word retail, people think of stores. And it's really not about that anymore. That's all. It's really more of a way of thinking commercially. So that's one belief. The second belief that I've carried forward is that designers are as important as the rest of the chiefs. When I left my firm FRCH, and I went to Senior Vice President of Marketing, I know about marketing, nothing, and design, retail development. All of a sudden, got this huge salary, and I'm thinking that's because it's called marketing, not necessarily because it's design. This is 1999, and so we had these chief executives, chief financial officers, chief information officers, chief this, chief that, and there was no real chief design officer. And so, my passion has been to make sure that design is recognized in the C-suite on an equal basis as all the other business disciplines, and to help develop, the left brain, right brain kinds of leadership into thinking a more integrated, process. I also come to believe that, having worked on both sides, that it's kind of harsh, but I'll say it, that very few consultants actually can make a company happen. They come in with lots of ideas and lots of pitches and all the buzzwords about brand, experience that, and 360 this. I mean, you've all heard of it. At the end of the day, what I realized, and I'm so happy I spent the last part of my career on the client side, is it takes world-class clients to do world-class work. Without the client leadership, it's really tough to make much happen. And so it's really top-down. I'm going to talk today more or less about what I know and what I feel and what my experiences have been. Maybe some anecdotal stuff will creep in. We've all been to all the conferences. I'm going to try not to get into the buzzwords, and I'm trying not to pontificate about what everybody says, about what everybody thinks they should be doing. It makes me crazy when I hear the consultants talking about stuff that they have nothing to do with, but they're expounding expertise about that. I'm really going to try to focus on what I know based on what I've done, and hopefully, that will be meaningful and important to you. So here we go. And then the award. When Karen called me, so let's do this, and I've been aware of PAVE. I have to admit, I've not really been involved in PAVE. One of the blessings that I have, as I reflect on my career, has been the opportunity to work with brilliant young people. They've made me look very, very good. I mean, back in the days of FRCH, there was a few of us, and I said one day we're going to reverse the pyramid, and I know we're going to be successful when clients are coming in and I've never met them. And I'll never will meet them and don't need to meet them. And so the opportunity to get involved with young students just clicked for me right away. And so I said, well, what can I do? You're going to pay my way. I don't really need you to do that. So let's spend that money differently. And I'll put some money in and let's do something different. And so we created this recognition award. It just became Kevin Roche. I didn't suggest that. And I'm just writing a check. And we have our first, I also realized today that I'm locked in now, not just this year. So I haven't told my wife that. That's okay. Okay, so here we go. You can see I don't rehearse. So some beliefs. And these are things you all hear. And I'm going to try to tell you why I think it's important, that this idea that design is being more than how something looks and feels. It's how something works and how something is experienced. Easy to say, hard to do. Back where I said, it takes really a great client to make sure that happens and it's committed to it. That the outside designers have a tough time driving that, if you will, into the DNA of a corporation unless they believe in it top down and they're willing to invest in it in all the ways. I'm also a student of great books, and I became a ferocious reader about thought leadership and trend before thought leadership was a buzzword and all the big firms had thought leadership newsletters. There were people writing great books and futurists and people like that. And this book is really great. It's called Do You Matter? And it really gets in the face of why you matter in the world today. And I'm going to talk about how design really helps that or contributes to that. I was asked to do a podcast. I never did one before in September with a group called the Robin Report. Those who know the Robin Report. If you don't, you should look them up. They do a really nice job. And we talked about this role of design in the corporations today around the world, and particularly my thought of the absence of that traditionally in American retail corporations, where I thought it was starved. Is it going on? Maybe it's because I'm looking up and not looking down. When we think about the brands that the consultants and we all like to talk about, whether it's Hermes or Dior, Armand Hotel Group, or Porsche, I'm a Porsche guy, design is at the center and the heart of what they do. It's inseparable of the way they think and their DNA. To pull it out, separate it, or not seamlessly integrate it top down is just virtually impossible. Watch what LVMH does with Tiffany's. I guarantee you it will be design driven at the most intellectual, highest definition of what that might mean to you, and will permeate everything that they do. It's not just designers who are designing. It's a different kind of executive that I'll touch on. When you see what they've done with Belmont Group, the emerging hotel group that consolidated, spectacular. Chevron the hotel, one hotel, now it's a group of hotels. The new one in Paris just takes your breath away. Peter Reno did a brilliant job on that. Rimowa was a mass market Samsonite of Germany. And it's not that anymore, as we all know. And I will suggest that that's by design. Okay. In the end, what I'm trying to say, it all comes together in this idea of collective thinking, that it is a role, and on the corporate side, what I felt my role was with LVMH was really more a conductor role. I designed very little personally, but I influenced everything that was on. Some of my design firms that I chose to have work on projects will know that we were very hands-on. There was a decision made that we didn't agree with. You should be in a room when I tell Rob Koolhaas, "I'm sorry, we're not going to do that." I think it's right. The dogma wasn't important to us. So this why you matter is really important. Listen to the podcast, look it up, and you can see it. I thought it was pretty good in terms of talking more intimately about the relationship with CEOs and the role of design in the world and how I think it is important. I would say I used to have to stand in front of what's called store committee every 4 to 6 weeks for 6 hours, and stand up like this to a group about this size of executives from around the world and present 6 hours of projects. Literally $350, $400 million of capital at one time, well over almost $2 billion in projects. I have to present these projects and then go to Paris every 4 to 6 weeks to Mr. Arnaud's floor and present projects to him. And I remember saying something like this. I've obviously smoothed it out, but I said, guys, let's don't sacrifice the experience by measuring the financial metrics. Let's drive the financial metrics by the quality of the experience. It's just a different way of thinking. I said one day, you know, at the end of the day, guys, we're selling stuff nobody really needs. This is not about need. Calm down, right? I said one day, the last thing Paris needs is another department store. Imagine the hoopla if someone said we're going to open a new department store in New York. Who needs that? I mean, most of them are pretty boring here anyway, very predictable. But who needs it? So in the end, we talked about creating these things that I call socially relevant. And having grown up in the department store sector, I didn't find anything very interesting. And so, and I had a CFO told me one day, we got to go faster and cheaper. Why can't we roll this out? I'm not, not a rollout guy. We talked about this idea of this uniqueness. And let me just, give you an example. I'm going to read this, apologize, but I want to get it right. I wrote this, which in the very beginning, innovation was not often focused on scaling for the sake of scale or consolidation to save expense, resulting in disappearing iconic brands, reducing staff costs, editing the experience to only the highest margin categories of merchandise, clothing, editing food markets, taking restaurants, taking lifestyle, taking categories specific with children and all sorts of services out of the businesses. We all know what business that is, right? It's American Department Store. In the beginning, the Grand Dame department stores were one-of-a-kind destinations, deeply connected to the locations they were in, socially relevant to the communities they served. These were uniquely iconic buildings. True sense of place was a result. They became really one-of-a-kind. So here's just an example of kind of 4 of what we call gallerias that we were involved in creating. The Fondaco in Venice. I was asked in 2013, go look at this building. I'm going to show it to you. And what do you think? In 2016, we opened the Fondaco 90 million euro project. There's only one. There will only ever be one. There only should be one. It's deeply rooted in the community it is. It's deeply unique and deeply curated. The Bon Marché, there's only one. God willing, there will only ever be one. There only needs to be one. And it is uniquely contextually relevant and deeply rooted in the psyche of Reed Ghosh and the customer on the left bank. Cambodia and Siem Reap. If you haven't been to Siem Reap, it's spectacular. We went into Cambodia and built a galleria. And it's all about this localness and local artisans. In Venice, everything manufactured was within 100 miles of the city of Venice. We didn't need to go out. And certainly we weren't rolling things out. And then you have Samaritan, which opened at the end of June. And I'll show you some. People say you speak French. I have to live in Paris. I go, yes. My French friends from Melaire was in the room, so she's smiling when I went, because it's my French. Yeah. So this idea, how do you become this concept of sought after experience or sought after product? if you're a brand, how you become sought after by leading retailers or by the leading lifestyle influencers, by the consumer itself. My concept is I suggest you do this by this continuous cycle of innovation and exploration, that is highly focused and dynamic. Easy to say, again, all the consultants talk about it. Doing it takes a client that is unrelenting and totally committed and doesn't know how not to do that. And that's what we did, in these projects I just mentioned. It was like, well, why not? And nothing was, let's do this because this is what we did in the last 2 or the last 3. Everything was from the merchandising mixes to, everything is unique to that context, of that location, and that city. So this idea that leadership really has to get back to this question: why in hell do you really matter? Today, when everything is available on your phone, if you accept the premise we're selling stuff nobody really needs, generally speaking, and it can be delivered to you anywhere in the world, anytime, why do you need to go to this place? And that's back to this fundamental questions. Why do you really matter? Why in hell does anyone care if you're in business? Do you exist? We're selling stuff nobody needs. I don't think today you can be too overly creative, too innovative, too design driven. I don't think it's possible to not be too agile, too curious, too much asking the question, why not? Of course, you have to do it with accountability. There are financial metrics. That's a given. That's understood. But as I said, that's not necessarily what should lead. That's just part of the mix. Designing executive suite. This one I have fun with. Traditional retail executives push design reporting to real estate. Becca, Bank of America, you report to real estate, operations, marketing. It's its own line of business.
No, I sit within
To the profit center. You get my point. A very, very good friend of mine, some of you know, I remember his name, Rudy Jabowski, who ran store plan design at Federal Department Stores. He would tell me, why do I report? His name was Tom's last name. He's the head of operations, and all these guys make 5 times what I make, and yet we're building and creating the very places of which everything they all do happen in this place. And that was my position of VMH in these stores. There's 400 people in the building in Hong Kong, and everything they did happened inside those buildings, and we were creating those buildings. Fortunately, my good fortune, we were credited and positioned equally to many of these other senior executives, and rewarded accordingly. And so it worked. So why is design reporting to visual merchandising or marketing, visual merchandising reporting to marketing? All these things I find kind of strange in terms of this idea that how important design is. This leadership that I'm talking about at its best, and there are examples out there. It has courage, it has risk, it has vision, there's boldness, there's passion, there's agility, there's a willingness to break eggs. There's a willingness to color outside the line. There's a willingness for the C-suite to be wrong. And it's okay that they know they may admit they're wrong. It's that process that becomes important. Think of Gary Friedman. Remember who Gary Friedman is? Restoration Hardware. He's not managing someone else's business. He's creating something. He's out there, taking risk, having vision, breaking some eggs, coloring outside the lines, doing things that he's the first generation creation versus second generation, I call them CEO management, maintenance men. They're responding to the market, the share price, they collect their 10 million a year and then they walk away, go live in Florida, it's someone else's problem. You have guys like Rick, the name Rick Caruso. Rick Caruso has Caruso Enterprises on the Grove in LA. It was just a guest of his because he wants me to do some things with him at a Rosewood Hotel in Miramar Beach. It's just a spectacular experience. This is first generation creation guys, men and women. They're creating things. They're not managing things. You have the K11 group in Asia, spectacular family business doing really unbelievable mixed-use projects, retail concepts, hospitality concepts. We have a Central group out of Thailand, family, the Chatabal family, which is about Selfridges this week. They're it's second generation, third generation, but it's family driving businesses for long-term value creation. And you, again, it's innovation, it's all those things I'm talking about at the top. And Mr. Arnaud himself. It is a 62, 65 million euro a year family business. And it is driven, in my perspective, lots of opinions, from that concept of innovation and creation. We are creating businesses, we're creating newness, we're not just managing what's already successful. The design at the board and the board, really interesting dynamic when you sit in some of these board meetings of multi-billion-dollar corporations and so forth. At its highest level, it's inherently woven in the DNA of the leadership. They really think a lot, talk a lot about this idea of why you matter. This design thinking, this culture at its best, is guided by this clear, what I call non-negotiables. There are certain things that are just non-negotiable. I learned this the hard way. I used to get just curse and be frustrated of having to working with Cartier. They were one of the worst. They still are, perhaps. Hermes, Dior. I mean, these folks are impossible to work with, and we'd have to put them in our buildings and so forth. In Samaritan, that was. I started that project in 2010. I mean, working with them to break down their forts and their castles, is just impossible. The reason it's impossible is because it is non-negotiable. Design with them and their standards is just not up for debate. Doesn't mean they're not constantly evolving, but it's that kind of unrelenting, uncompromising commitment about design, broadly defined as part of who they are and the way they do business, that makes them difficult. It makes them brilliant, makes them great. So, up on that. These happen to be pictures from Samaritan. I'm going to click through some quick projects, but here I'm just really talking about concepts. And so, what makes a place an attraction? What makes an experience? How do you do that by design? Again, it takes really long-term commitment. This project, over 12 years, I started 2010, stop and start. We burned through a number of design firms that couldn't make the cut. It's almost last standing are the ones that get the credit. Just very, very complex, very difficult project. And it was $1 billion US in its development. And it takes this kind of first generation leadership to really stand the test of time. I mean, the financial markets thought, who else would put $1 billion in a department store or a project like this? Doesn't make any money. Missing the point. When you roll this up into a 62, 65 billion euro corporation and you're creating something new, that you have this long-term vision around value creation, it changes the point of view of the way folks look at these projects. And there are lots of examples. I mean, I just was looking at, Howard Schultz, create Starbucks. He didn't say, I want to create the best coffee brand in the world. He had a concept about the experience and socialize together. There was a book called Third Place, about that. In the very, very beginning, I had the opportunity as a young kid to work with Les Wexner and Victoria's Secret and those businesses. He was a first generation creator. He didn't know what he didn't know. It was the good news. He was an innovator. He took risk. It was a brilliant company at one time. All sorts of reasons why these companies lose their way, or just time. Some companies should go out of business. The next slide really speaks to courage, and I tried to put a little bit of humor in this, and so let's see how this goes. Hope the technology works.
I have ever heard. First of all, people hate spiders, so you can't call a hero Spider-Man. You want him to be a teenager? Teenagers can only be sidekicks. It wasn't selling well, and we were sending the last issue to press. Just to get it out of my system, I put Spider-Man in Amazing Fantasy, featured him on the cover. A month later, all the sales figures came in. My publisher came racing into my office. Stan, You remember that character we both loved so much, Spider-Man? He said, let's do him as a series. Now, why am I telling you this? If you have an idea that you genuinely think is good, don't let some idiot talk you out of it.
Yeah, I mean, Stan Lee, right? One of the founders of Marvel Comics. Who would have thunk, right? Marvel Comics. I mean, there just are no rules and there are no boundaries. And I find that, and yet for me, you know, those of you who know of me, you know, the first 25 years of my career, you know, was focused on department stores and specialty retail and all these old categories, you know, that we all talk about, and rolling things out and got hospitality and so forth. It wasn't until I became a client that I realized the power that clients have and the lack of power that the consultants have unless they're partnered with an inspired client. And so I used to say, you know, until you've worked on the client side, you're not going to be a good consultant. And until you've worked on the consultant side, you're not going to be a good client. How many consultants have met clients where, you know, they sit back and say, okay, you know, they kind of treat you like a vendor and they're waiting for you to make a mistake and then it's your fault. And I would tell our people, it is your responsibility to make sure our consultants are successful. If they're successful, we're successful. You know, we're there to help them help us. And it wasn't about price and, you know, putting out bids and doing pitches because pitches are pitchy and all that crap, if you will. And so if you have an intelligent client, they know it and how to organize and orchestrate resources and make sure they're successful, then you have this winning formula. So what makes a place an attraction? I don't know. I think it's back to this core idea of willingness to really innovate. In Samaritan, 12 restaurants, 10,000 square foot beauty salon. You know, it's a lot of things that the classic department stores would say, I don't make enough margin. The merchants would say, what are my sales per square foot? Give me that space. I'll put more crap in there that nobody needs, and therefore it should work. You can imagine where I would go with that explanation. So in the end, you know, this idea of be in the business of creation and not so much in this business of managing things. And again, that really has to stop top down. So this idea that good design is making something intelligible. Okay, that's design process rigor, making something memorable. We hope people remember it. Great design is making something memorable and hopefully meaningful. Why do you matter? When design is memorable and meaningful, that's when really experiences are realized. I love this book, Dream Society. It was published in 1999 by a futurist named Rolf Jensen. My first time as Senior Vice President of Marketing, a guy named Tony Baloney handed me this book. It's the #2 at LVMH. And said, read this. And it talks about this idea of storytelling and this idea of managed by information versus managed by imagination. And this book talks about the trends of moving from information-based leadership to imagination-based leadership. And at its best, that's where it exists. This happens to be Four Seasons. It's one of my love brands. You know, that was a book for a while. It was another buzzword, love brand. I love going to Four Seasons. I love it. I love my Porsches. You know, I love Balvenie, 21-year-old, 24-year-old Balvenie single malt whiskey. I love it. My wife loves Hermes bag. Birkin, you know, she waited 10 years to buy one. She wouldn't pay for it herself. So the things you love, you know, places you love, there are objects you love, and there are people you love, and you can go back to why do they matter to you and why you love them. And getting at that is this magical blend of left and right brain, you know, kind of thinking. I was asked this question, so I wrote it down. You know, is global design universal? And world-class design is universal. Can someone turn this down for me a little bit now? Yeah, turn it down. So I think it is. I think that cultural differences exist around the world. Whether you, again, you know, I've lived and worked in Paris. I've lived and worked in Hong Kong. I went to Istanbul probably 30 times in 3 years, you know, at the Seoul, probably 30 times in 3 years working on the Shinsegae flagship that we did in Istanbul. And what I find is that, and an American dropped in Paris in the Bon Marché is like, he might as well be in Mars. Who is this guy? Does he speak language? You know, he's doesn't wear a scarf wrapped around his neck when it's 80 degrees. Who is this guy? And so I think that there are differences that exist, and they're greatly influenced by context. And I think as a global design citizen, you have to be uniquely sensitive and tuned into that. And again, if you think about the Italians, the Germans, the French, you know, the Americans, we all have generalizations that are founded on some fact. The Asian design agencies, wow, there's some just spectacular work. I mean, I'm overwhelmed by the talent that I think is in the world. I've really moved beyond. When we did Venice, we hired a small team, 6 people. OMA did the architecture. Rem was the chairman of the Biennale that year, so politically it helped get through the Historic Society in Rome and in Milan. And they did some really great things. But some of the firms and unique talent coming out of Asia, these multicultural, diverse teams of people that are just seamlessly woven influences from cultural differences, language differences, educational differences. It's just really exciting to see it and feel it. So I'm urging my young people to get out of their comfort zone, leave home, leave school, leave America, get out and see the world. Because, you know, when we started FRCH, you could count on one hand the firms in America doing retail design. Acker Group, you know, some of these I could go off the names, some of them don't mean anything to you guys, but I got to leave this slide. So get out there and really experience the world. This slide is trying to maybe give you an example of what I'm talking about. So I retired for a whole lot of reasons from the group at the end of 2019 and 2020. We all hunkered down in our homes. I'm in Palm Desert, California, where I built a new home. And then in 2019, I started really getting busy. So I'm doing a lot of work right now in the spirits and the wine sector, which is really sexy. And this is a page actually from a strategy session. And it's this idea of, I said, what business are you guys in anyway, right? So you go to, they're basically, and the real business is one in distribution, you know, $300 million a year, $400 million a year in total wine, you know, these big box concepts or so forth, or in the restaurant sector. And I said, in the end, and I wrote this down, I said, you know, consider you're in the hospitality business. After all, wine and spirits consumption is taken in a leisure setting with friends for celebration, to escape and relax, to enjoy the taste and experience, sever the craftsmanship, to belong to a story behind the brand, and in your mind, escape to a place wherever you want to go. And so the idea of consumption, you take it right back to the consumer point of, put it on my lips, it's in a hospitality or hospitality spirit. So you're not in the distribution business, you're in the hospitality business. And think of it differently. And so challenge those old sacred cows and really think outside the box. And this is a direct slide from, it happens to be the Orient Express from Venice to, well, there's in Asia, then you have Venice to Paris, Belmont Group, LVMH company. Take the wine spirits, put it in the hotels, put it on the trains, and you see the co-branding opportunities. It's endless, and then resorts and destination experiences in the maisons around the world. And I could go on. There's just some really exciting stuff happening there. Okay, here's a quote. I love this. Every property is remarkable and has its own timeless story to tell. Yet the hallmark of the Belmont brand thread through them all is heritage, craftsmanship, and a reputation for genuine, unscripted service, create exceptional experiences that stir the soul. I wish that was Macy's. I mean, the challenge that America is so big almost became its handicap. You know, let's just scale this thing and roll this out, and that's going to grow the business. And it did for a long time until it didn't anymore. As I said, I think some iconic businesses that were relevant and contextually, socially interesting just went away. So this is this idea of thinking, using design thinking and thinking differently, and how it can drive and how it changes the business. These guys, in one of my in-betweens, Starbucks wants to go to Vienna and look at our installations out there. So I was in Vienna, I look at these stupid green umbrellas, and this what I call this toxic creeping sameness of rollout. And they're in Vienna. Isn't cafe and coffee in Vienna is kind of important? And they're rolling these things out. It's like, what? I mean, ultimately, when Howard Schultz, I grossly generalized, steps back in, right? You go back to the creator and that creation, in the process of creating versus managing. It's a completely different way of thinking. And so here you have, the Reserve in Shanghai. I mean, it's spectacular, it's great design. But look at this, an alcohol mixing bar. Y'all get a drink. And so you have this kind of trying things and innovating things and breaking eggs. And you can all imagine sitting in a boardroom in a coffee company and say, let's put a mixology bar and co-brand and partner with Hennessy or Reimagining or Belvini or whoever, let's do it. I mean, it's not about selling coffee. Nobody needs another cup of coffee. Right? So it's this idea of just endless creation, endless expectation. And I personally think that there's more happening in the hospitality business, generally speaking, around the world than the traditional retail business. I think it's gotten, there are great exceptions. I'm making broad generalizations, but particularly in America, it's particularly boring, in my view. So still by itself, with the same repetitive offer, without a continuous cycle of serious investment, commitment, I mean real commitment, not just blah, 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 to innovation and evolution is not sustainable in my opinion. It's real, I call this toxic creeping sameness. So when I went into the group, I said, we're not going to do anything alike. What we do alike are the practices and the principles and the excellence we bring to our work. What the customer experience is different. When you go to Chiang Mai or Venice, you don't want the same Starbucks coffee shop. It's on every corner. You want to experience that location. So when we realized that we were in the hospitality business, selling stuff nobody needs, we needed to create a hospitality experience. And that's what we really set out to do. I think later in my notes, I have this. One of the reasons I left, my mother was passing away, my son was getting married, I had this 70th birthday going, oh shit, I'm going to turn 70. I'm supposed to do something else instead of work like this. We had a new CEO come in, and the chairman that I had reported to left, and he's now chairman of Hennessy. And a new CFO who's an American guy, about 47 from Harvard, really, really scary smart. Good news, bad news, really, really scary smart. And they said to me, absolutely true, with the president of operations, and some of the people in the room know these characters, and they said, Kevin, we have to go faster and cheaper. That's serious. So we just got done building, you're going to see some of the most spectacular projects in the world, recognized by one of the most spectacular corporations in the world today, in the generally speaking retail luxury business at the highest levels. I'm literally on average in Montage presenting every 6 weeks, and I have these gentlemen telling me go faster and cheaper. Well, I'm not a faster, cheaper guy, so I resigned. And resigning from well into a 7-figure job, I mean, I was paid very, very well, it took courage. And I share that not to be boastful, but this idea of believing deeply in what you do and what I was doing and why we were doing it overtook. So, I mean, this saying, I got off on a tangent, but this saying about I thought it was really good. In 2019, Pricewaterhouse did this idea of measuring return on experience and how you measure those intangibles versus the classic return on investment, the sales, the productivities, all these kinds of things that are important, but stand alone. It's this soft side that traditional right brain executives have trouble with, or right brain, I get confused. Really understanding, they get comfortable with those things you can't measure. start talking about things you can't measure, it can be short conversations. So I'm amazed. Do you ever notice everyone's a designer today? Everyone. I'm building a new house for my son and my new daughter-in-law. Everyone in my family is like world-class designers all of a sudden. They all have opinions. You know, and what's interesting is there's a lot of people that have really great opinions that aren't necessarily trained classically the way I'm trained. And you go, well, that ain't fair, right? This idea that aesthetic and visual literacy is compounded. As soon as I got out of Ohio and I started living around the world, you're absorbed. Those of you who live in New York enjoy this. Living in Paris, in Hong Kong, spent all time in Istanbul, places. You absorb these surroundings and they influence what I call your visual literacy. And the amount of communications today that visually educate us on what is good, okay, or how we feel about what we see brings up what I call, again, our visual literacy. And then this connection of what is socially relevant. So this idea that design is everywhere, it's adding this kind of sensory emotional appeal to everything. This idea that often the margin, it comes out of one of the books too that I've mentioned, often the margins in the beauty of the product, the object of place, and the story behind it. These paper clips. I have a book that has probably all the best paper clips I can collect around the world. When I found this paper clip, I don't remember when. They're stainless steel. And a box of them, I don't know, maybe $6 a box. And you can buy a box of paper clips for $3, $2 a box. So why does this paper clip cost that much more? Because it's just pretty. It's nice. It feels good. It looks good. You put that paper clip on a report and you hand it to someone, it has a different feeling than this other thing that is cheaper and probably faster to make. And so the margin there is in design and in the story. And you look at all these examples, the value is in the design and in the story behind it. This Dior new digital printing shop, blew me away in the Middle East. It's out there and it's happening. It's everything, whether it's an old product or, the Dior 999 or the Porsches or this joint venture between Dior and Moa on this little handbag. It's a beautiful little handbag. It's a joint venture between Moa. Used to be a mass market German Samsonite and Dior. So design made that happen. So that's my point. It's everywhere and it influences everything we do and not anyone owns it. This is a great book. It's new, recent. It's in the last 24 months by Pauline Brown. She's another ex-executive of LVMH. And she talks about the other AI, the aesthetic intelligence. One of the great blessings and benefits that I had in my time with the group is, again, being around people who really did appreciate the value of design and willing to invest in and pay for it. I'm absolutely blessed, because of that. And it's a great book, and you should read it. The example I give, years ago, this store opened in Paris on Rue de Sèvres. And, all the designers and all the architects and all the market go around, take pictures, and it's all in everybody's presentations for years. And they'll talk about what it is. You see it all the time. It makes me crazy when I see everybody talking about things they have nothing to do with. What, for me, I had the opportunity to meet some people in my time in Paris on this. This was an old swimming pool. It used to be an old swimming pool. It's on the left bank on Rue de Sèvres, just catty corner. And Hermes took this swimming pool and made it a great story. It's not the brand codes. I mean, that's innovation top down. It takes the chairman to decide, we're going to do this first in a swimming pool. Second, we're going to do something that breaks the brand codes, and we're going to color outside the lines. For me, that's what makes this brilliant, and it's a great example of this aesthetic intelligence at the most intellectual level. Read the book, and you'll know what I'm talking about. It takes real clarity, top down. It takes a brutally honest awareness of what your strengths are and brutally honest awareness of how much confidence you have as a leader to do these kinds of things, they may not work, you know. But this for me is why it was brilliant, not because it's a nice design, and it is, it's beautiful work, but because someone at the top in the client side said, we're going to do something innovative, and you don't have to follow the brand codes. You know, as I start to wrap up, I can't escape this without saying something about technology, and that's a whole other conversation, and I wouldn't need a guy to talk about it. I'm too old, you know, to talk about it. But we began to really drive this in, you know, to everything we do. I mean, in a classic traditional sense, Burberry's one of the best probably at it. One of them, they started 2009 and they stayed the course. I've been a part of a group where we invested millions and millions, and then new CEO comes in and says, well, I don't like that, I don't believe in it, and he got rid of it all, and then you start all over again. It's just a colossal waste. I mean, to get into this and from the traditional brick and mortar side really takes guts and long-term commitment of big money and talent and resources and so forth. And I think Burberry's really, you know, done it as well. I mean, Amazon's new cashierless stores, 60 Minutes did a special on it. It's coloring outside the lines. I mean, it's pretty interesting. Nike's virtual platform and their gaming, you know, through robots. Gaming's a $200 billion a year business. Now you can play a Nike game, and oh, by the way, you can buy a pair of shoes, they'll send them to you through the gaming network. Vuitton Simpsons, I don't know if any of you guys have seen it. To celebrate their 200-year digital experience, they created this cartoon, The Simpsons. It's fantastic. You can see it. And the avatars, right? The dematerialization through this physical metaverse world, where you're buying branded product. It's not tangible. It goes on your avatar. And you can buy the real stuff too. I mean, it's a whole world. I had a design firm this past week who over 300 people, maybe 350. 10% of them are coming back to the studios and they're saying, what do we do? And the CEO said to me, you know, my teenage daughters are building castles in this, you know, metaverse world, and they're meeting people. And so why can't we build projects that way? Go, man, it's above my pay grade. But that whole thing is another idea. And I suggest, and I think it's by evidence, it will be led by those top leaders who have risk, are bold, are innovative, are taking risk, are not trying to please, you know, shareholders or the markets, but are out there really forging new ground. So in the end, just some quick beliefs. Visionary experience. Continuous breakaway content must evolve from within, supported by long-term commitment to design excellence. I mean, I used to think client and the consultant side, we could go in and solve the world. You know, when I had all the design firms pitching me, when I was on the client side, I would just laugh at myself. Did I sound that way? You know, we did this and we did that, and they invited us to solve the world, create this, create that. All true, but find great clients. Good firms fire bad clients. And when I had the opportunity to work with some firms where you just have to feed the monster, you know, that's a really tough way to go. So we were always looking for design agencies that really weren't necessarily interested in volume, but were interested in doing really interesting things. So it takes visionary leadership. Color outside the lines. Seldom breakthroughs come from watching the competition. Encourage breaking stuff, curiosity, agility, and the why not question. No rules, no boundaries. The gentleman that I had been fortunate, most of my time I was to report to, absolutely demanded this. And it flip-flopped overnight. That's why I'm not there. Create meaningful, memorable experiences. I said, easy to say, hard to do. It takes a real partnership with a whole lot of resources to do this, but surprise and delight every time. Exceed what has become expected. The consumer's bombarded by stimuli. We talked about this. The fundamentals will no longer break through. Ensure social relevance. Become societal. Define the basis by which you matter. Really, really matter. become relevant to various parts of my life, various parts of my beliefs, and stand for something other than just stuff we don't need. Lead category innovation. Every category is on this continuous cycle of just constant reinventing, constant changing itself. You just can't deliver the same thing in the same way, and plenty of examples of that sprinkled around the world. Challenge the traditional, developing through the same formats, scaling alone, I've already talked about this, won't stimulate breakaway experiences, or first choice recognition, color outside the lines. The last, and one of my favorites, is challenge the brand cuffs. Those of you who worked with me, I hated the brand word. I'd say, please come in and talk to me without using this word. In that, what I like to say, be vision driven. Big idea, be a big idea enterprise. When you do it well enough and long enough, and it really matters to the consumer, don't worry, somebody out there will call you a brand. Probably the agencies will call you a brand. So it's back to the core content, not the wrappings you put around it, but the core content that makes you matter. And if you, again, do that well enough, long enough, someone will call you a brand. Don't worry about it. So I said, break off the brand codes. Don't worry about the codes. Be too limited. We're going to quickly dance through some projects. This is Fundaco Venice. Imagine being sent to Venice and look at this building on the Grand Canal at the Rialto Bridge in 2013, built in the 1500s or 1200s, really, really old. They've been vacant almost 50 years, and say we want to build a galleria there. I came back and said, I think it's a good idea. We should do that. So we did. And long story short, it was a 90 million euro project. It's spectacular. It has a Michelin star restaurant in the atrium space. It's a lifestyle destination kind of experience. It's selling a lot of stuff nobody needs. It's very contextually relevant. We hired a guy named came out of David Chipperfield's office. So I'm talking to him, so I'll come back to him. We'll come back. Anyway, we had Ram, who else was the design architect. We had the interiors people by Jamie Forbear out of London, 6 people in his office. Just different resources, but it's just beautiful. If you're in Venice, you really have to see it. Every room is different. Every room is different. Your Jimmy Choo's and Milano Bolanis look fabulous on these 140,000 euro tables. We did 3 of them, carved out of a single block of travertine. Red escalations. So just a really beautiful, wonderful project. Took 3 years. We opened October 1st, 2016. It's now 5 years old. VIP suites. See the Grand Canal or the Rialto Bridge here in the background. I miss my Italian friends. Great food. Ate a lot of weight. Istanbul, dropped into Istanbul, Zorlo Center, mixed-use project, 4,000 seat performing arts center. Worked on the master plan for the retail podium. And then the investment, the family, who's the largest textile family in Turkey, Turkish tiles, have a store called Bayman. And when some of you may know Holt Renfrew in Asia, when they were really good like that, or when Barney's was really great curators, great editors, world-class visual merchandisers, really lifestyle driven. So this is a 10,000 square meter store. This is one that I actually did most of the schematic concept design details and drawings. They came to me and I brought a small team, and this is between my FRCH and my LVMH days. But it's a beautiful project. It looks this way today. Pre-COVID, they were getting ready to start a renovation. So I may be going back, if I depend how hard I want to work, and take on a redo of this. So it's really great. Samaritan in Paris, it's a must-see. You have to go. It's one of a kind. It's not a white box, not a bunch of white marble. It's painstakingly developed over a period of 10 years. This is the Cheval Blanc Hotel, developed by Peter Marino. Sana was the design architect. This is the Samaritan, which lives through this building. There's offices and some residential. This is the Rivoli building by Sana. Has offices for the group above, and then 2 floors of retail and hospitality and spa in it. Again, $100 million US, long taking. Wonderwall won a design competition, and the president of Samaritan Group and I were going to Tokyo every 3 or 4 weeks, sitting with them. We realized in about 3 months they couldn't do the project, not because they're not a great firm, not because they're not talented, not because they weren't trying, but there's this concept called fit. And they just weren't a fit, but they wanted the beauty contest. That's why I hate design competitions. And so we had to go to Mr. Arnaud and say, the firm you chose can't do the project. And then you duck and cover. But we got through that. The chairman that I was working with really supported us, and we recommended several organizations. We ended up with Yabel Puschelberg did our fashion floors. Why them? I felt that the store needed to be beautiful, just pretty. In my opinion, they just do pretty beautiful work. And being a client whose hands are on the wheel, you have the confidence to use who you need to do what you need in a partnership kind of way. And then Melaire, who's in the room, Ella behind the back, their Paris and Hong Kong office did our beauty hall, 35,000 square feet of beauty, over 180 something. Really, I think it's the best in the world, one of the best. The second best is another one that Jeffrey Hutchinson did for us in Macau, 4 Seasons, which is also equally spectacular. Anyway, it's really just, it's restoration, renovation, new construction. I could give an hour presentation just on this, but you have to go see it. 12 restaurants and cafes. Again, a large spa. This is the beauty floor. It's in the underground. We had 7,000 square feet of mock-up space for 3 years, $5 million in mock-up, 5 million euros in mock-up expense. Everything had to be mocked up. If you're in the luxury business and you're in this business, nothing is left to chance. That's what makes these brands so good. It is uncompromising. And those who went through this process with me and the mock-ups like on Jeffrey's project, it was painful for them at times. But if you have a good client, they're intimately engaged in this process. Concept, I mean, creativity, context, subway station, under the stairs, you get it. No, you don't worry about the brand codes. There are brand codes, they're all there, but each thing is unique and different. Okay, so the 5th floor restaurant is, I mean, it's a spectacular place. The food's okay, it's fine. It's really about place. And the presentations of the way you see brands throughout the store. The VIP room, you know, YP did a beautiful job, but it was too expected. It was just another, the handwriting was too obvious. Nothing wrong with the work, but there was nothing great about the work. It was just, okay, pretty work. So I moved them aside, and they forgave me, but I found 3 girls, literally 3 girls in Paris, in their 30s, doing just charming decorating work in residential. And I said, come on, what's the French word for 3 girls? Trois filles? Trois filles. I said, call them trois filles. Gave them a logo, gave them 500,000 euros, and said, we're going to take off 10% of the floor fixtures. I'm not going to tell the merchants. I'm going to replace them with iconic pieces. And then I'm going to give you the VIP lounge and go in and decorate every room differently. And we'll see it when it's done. They did a beautiful job. When you walk through the store and you see these pieces, and you just smile. Merchants got over it. We're all good. One of the great compliments that I like to share, Kevin, we finally figure out how you do this. You listen to all these people, and then you do what you want. Not exactly, but you have to have trust. You have to have the confidence from top down that you're doing it for the right reasons, and you have to listen and synthesize all of this input. That's an idea of field design leadership. So yeah, you just see things and smile. And the Bon Marché is that way. We did that to Bon Marché. You know, we had an annual budget for antiques and restoration pieces. We go to the markets in Milan. We go to the mid-century markets in Europe and buy great pieces, and just, you know, it's one of a kind. So that's the Samaritan. You know, we did things like in Singapore, the Changi Airport, Singapore is one of the largest airports in the world in terms of traffic. maybe some in China have taken over. The group, we were doing just over $550 million a year just in spirits and wine in this airport, 18 stores. 2012 said, Kevin, we have to be innovative. So we came up with this idea of creating these 2-story flagships in an airport. We put in escalators that we had to remove baggage handling equipment and main fire sprinkler feeds to get escalator pits in. We spent 18 stores, probably $100 million, and built these spectacular wine and spirits experiences in the Changi airport. So just, you see the renderings and you see the before and after, and I could go on. Each one of these is an hour presentation. In Macau does around 48 billion US dollars a year in gaming. Vegas does 8 billion. So 40 billion more a year in gaming. We had 2 gallerias there, literally across the street at their peak, doing $1 billion US dollars a year, literally across the street, selling the same thing. This one became a renovation. It's called City of Dreams. Zaha Hadid was doing a new tower here, and we were redoing the retail podium underneath. And it's another great, spectacular, unique project. It's called Integrated Resorts, where you have gaming, hospitality, entertainment, theaters, all this stuff, and we do a lot of business. Again, we were trying things and breaking eggs. So we said, let's do a concept store with whiskey and spirits and luxury watches. Makes sense, right? Let's put them together. Why not? So we came out with that concept with the merchants in the watch and jewelry group and the head merchant in wine and spirits, and the Malherbe agency in Paris helped us create this, and it's just great. It's whiskey and watches. Now imagine me sitting in the room with the old Terry Lundgren saying we should try this. I don't mean to be really. I mean, there's just get out and see the world, see what's happening. It's spectacular. Great things everywhere. Big generalizations. Abu Dhabi Airport hasn't been open yet. It's 14 million square feet or something. 4 or 5 billion. It's a Cohn Pedersen Fox project. From the ground floor to the top of this beam is 52 meters. The problem is that the weight of the structure is sinking, and they haven't been able to open the building. Well, we were making a bid to take over the retail. And we said, what we're going to do is we're going to build the biggest, most spectacular beauty hall in the world. Beauty and fragrance is really important in the Middle East. So the Malherbe agency put together with us. So I had Ginza working on part of it, which was not so successful, not so creative, but they did part of it. And then Malherbe, we were this beauty concept. There was films and movies. I think we spent about $4.5 million just on concept work for this presentation. Films, actors with voiceover and an Arabic accent. Nothing was left to chance. Bon Marché, it was living in Paris and working on this as an American guy. It's great. It's fantastic. A guy named Patrice Wagner is, I think, the best department store merchant in the world today, at least in the top 2 or 3. Runs the Bon Marché. Came from the KaDeWe in Berlin. He's as much about event marketing as he is about merchandising. This is an event marketing company who does it in a department store. And pay attention to it. It's really, really exciting. They don't really do visual merchandising. They do event marketing. When they had their Cool California campaign a couple of years ago, everything was about California. Years and years ago. Those of you who are close to my age may remember something in the early days. Neiman Marcus used to do something called Fortnite. They would travel the world and bring cultural references to the stores, and product campaigns. A whole season was around those cultural stores, Marrakesh or wherever it was, countries, regions, cultures, languages. So they do this here. But anyway, I spent the better part of 3 years setting the master plan, putting the budgets together for what became a 5-year renovation, complete reposition of Bon Marché. Carries on. I mean, these projects are gifts that keep giving. They just keep going. And the food hall is, I think, again, one of the best in the world because it's a place where you go and have lunch and market. The La Cave, the wine cave, it's 5,000 square feet and about 90,000 bottles in storage below. It's a fantastic experience. I said to the chairman one day, I said, let's put a restaurant in the atrium. Let's float it. Float it. So we tore the roof off, rebuilt this whole building. We put the restaurant in the atrium, and you walk across the bridge to get to it. I mean, again, it's why not, right? It's an experience. It's reservation hard to get in season. Now the Moy Hennessy Global Headquarters is in the space just above. We fill it every day. It's charming. So, in my message is there's a renewed interest in what I call more discreet and authentic expression of this idea of connoisseurship. Doesn't necessarily mean high-priced product. The process and commitment of discovery towards breakaway creations is not a trivial endeavor. It has to be top down. It has to be woven in the DNA of the chairman, CEO. If they're not into it, you're just pushing water uphill. And those who are doing it, design is woven into their makeup. Gary Friedman, the guy who founded Dick's Sporting Goods, Ed Stack. He's now stepped down. He's got a female team, dynamic female team, just kicking ass, evolving that business. It was his father's business. He was a first generation creator. And so, most corporations' design is more narrowly focused and defined than it should, in my opinion. Social responsibility, creativity, visual intelligence, executive design leadership cannot be regulated. The role of the creative leader is not to dominate the conversation. It's sometimes hard for me not to. Or direction or creative leadership, but create a safe environment, a culture where everyone's ideas are embraced and valued. So we awarded this to a young woman. Her name is Vera Williams. She's here today. I was drawn by the humanity and passion and intellect of Vera's submission. I began to read her response to the 3 questions, and I could not look away. Vera's willingness to tell her personal story, so openly and seamlessly woven into her passion as a student of architecture and design, demonstrated to me her conviction towards her work and displayed real personal strength to have that courage to tell her story. In the end, storytelling is a big part of what we do, isn't it? It's both visual and it's verbal. And when it's honest, full of original thought, and it is both believable and it's captivating. When it's honest and full of original thought, it is both believable and captivating. She told us about herself and her passion and went beyond the expected classroom lecture topics and speak. This is why we chose Vera. In the first opening couple sentences, she said, "Those who come before us often have words of wisdom to help us along the journey. Choose a job you love, and you will never have to work a day in your life." Paul Vickers, who turned out to be a classmate of mine at school, I hadn't talked since 1975 to what he had seen. I didn't speak to him. Several of his students submitted until after I made a decision. He said, "Vera is an incredibly talented intelligent, ethical, task-oriented, strong-willed woman with an appreciation for architecture and design and a real dedication to helping others. She is a gifted designer, artist, and fabricator." That really interested me, Paul Vickers. This is from her opening paragraph. Let's see if I can get through this. "My life in the Ukraine was not perfect, nor was it easy. I did not experience what most people see as beautiful things. There was no luxury or privilege where I grew up. And maybe that's why I so easily found the extraordinary in the little things." Say no more. Vera, come on.
I would like to invite up Jennifer Acevedo, Editor-in-Chief, Associate Publisher, VMSD Magazine, and Marie Kasman, Vice President, Group Brand Director at Smart Work Media.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. Marie and I are very excited to be here back in person again this year. Every year, VMSD honors excellence in visual merchandising and design here in New York with its coveted Crystal Apple Award. Visual merchandising has returned to the spotlight as retailers have renewed their dedication and their investment in these programs to refresh their store environments. Those retailers and brands making an impact are the ones who are moving beyond the status quo and using compelling and memorable in-store displays, whimsical windows, and mannequins en masse to wow shoppers and give them a reason to come into and come back to their stores. Marie?
Righty, so now let's proceed with the awards. The first award goes to Ready Soho. Have images? Located at 125 Prince Street, New York City, Ready Soho serves as the urban base camp for pets and pet parents looking for adventure, offering an elevated shopping experience featuring curated ready merchandise and new exclusive pet-centric experiences. Unfortunately, Petco could not be here in person to accept the award, but sends their thanks for the recognition. Keep an eye out for a full feature on this exciting new flagship in the upcoming issue of VMSD.
With that dog photo camera. Our second award goes to London Jewelers in Manhasset, New York. London Jewelers has been a mainstay on Long Island for more than 30 years, and while the past year has definitely presented its challenges, creativity in the way that jewelers showcase their collections has stepped outside the box, keeping the industry on track to shine. Designers at Nelson Worldwide created an environment for London Jewelers location that is luxurious but also welcoming, while displaying the family-owned story and their commitment to each customer. Accepting the award on behalf of London Jewelers is Germana Gioglio, Senior Technical Designer from Nelson Worldwide. Please welcome Germana.
Thank you very much. It was a great opportunity to work with London Jewelers. It doesn't happen very often to work with the client that is also the owner and is like a family. And you meet them in the meeting room and they have their kids, their dog, and you really get to know their thoughts and their vision. And it's really an achievement to see these coming into life and see them being so happy about the results. So thank you, Nelson, and former FRCH for the opportunity. Thank you.
And our third award goes to Manola Blahnik, flagship on Madison Avenue. Yay. Designers reimagined the four-story building at 717 Madison Avenue as the New York home for the historic luxury shoe brand. The 1923 landmark divided into two identical storefronts separating the men's and women's area at the entrance, while the two sections converge into a shared space connected by an archway in the rear. Unfortunately, Manola Blahnik was not able to send a representative, but they do have shoes in the back of the room for each and every one of them.
Now I'd like to invite up Cindy Cotto and Laura Louie from Callison RTKL and Mark Mapala, Associate Professor, Bellevue College, for the announcement of this year's recipients of the 2021 PAVE Student Design Competition sponsored by Callison RTKL.
For doing this now. Thanks for supporting PAVE. The student design competition is a real big part of the PAVE experience, not just for us as members, but also for the students. It's really an opportunity to have them be very exploratory with their vision and to have fun with it, really. And, you know, with 2020 and 21 being such a interesting time for our students, especially. This design competition was really a way to bring back some of that hope and some innovation into what we could potentially see in the future with our community. And so the design competition was based on this concept of third place, which is a term by a social urbanologist, Ray Oldenburg. And so this competition was a way for students to design for the community, a small scale intervention for a neighborhood or a public space, with the hopes of bringing sustainability, accessibility, and diversity into our lives together again. So And we had 65 entrants, which is real great. All over the world, actually, you're going to see representatives of the students here, top 5. So.
Right, well, I'm excited to announce the top 5 winners. They're in no particular order. The first one is Eric Chen from California State University in Long Beach.
Hi, my name is Eric Chen. I'm a junior of Cal State Long Beach. I'm so proud that my work has been selected as a top 5 submission. I just want to say thank you for your affirmation of my work. It really means a lot. Everything's worth it. Thank you.
Our next winner is Mishal Hydros from Jamia Millia Islamia, India. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I really tried.
Hi, myself Michelle from India. I'm so happy to be one of those 5 concepts selected for me this design competition. Thank you PAVE community for giving me such an opportunity. In future, I would like to collaborate with such an amazing and prestigious companies like Alice and RTKL. Thank you.
Our next winner is Ryan Ross from Bellevue College.
Hey PAVE, Ryan Ross, Bellevue College. I want to say thank you PAVE for this amazing opportunity to help meet the street. Thank you to all my instructors at Bellevue College, my friends and family for encouraging me to enter, and of course my fellow finalists. I was truly inspired by all of your projects and it's an honor to be a finalist with you. Thanks again PAVE, hope to see you again soon in person for future PAVE competitions.
And then our next winner is actually here, Sarai Maman from Fashion Institute of Technology.
Hi, I'm Sarai, and I'm an Israeli VPET student at the Fashion Institute of Technology. Thank you, PAVE, and thank you, Caris and RTKL, for this honor and recognition. Thank you to my professors. I am so proud and so grateful to represent the Fashion Institute of Technology and my VPET department. Thank you so much.
And then our final winner, Wayu Yudhistira Nugraha from Longchong Kuning University in Indonesia.
Hello everyone, I'm Wahyu Yudhistira Nugraha, an architecture student at Longchong Kuning University, Indonesia. I'm honored and grateful for my project being selected as one of the 5 best projects in the PAVE 2021 Student Design Competition. Thank you to PAVE Global as the organizer. Thank you to Kellyson RTKL as the sponsor of this competition. Thank you to the judges for their hard work in evaluating all projects in this competition. And yep, thank you everyone.
Congrats to all the students, and it really was an honor to be able to judge them. There were so many great submissions, but those are the ones that really rose to the top. Thank you.
Now I'd like to bring up Rachel Cooper, Managing Director, and Andrew Cooper, President of ASI Architectural Systems, Inc., for the announcement of the 2021 PAVE Rising Star.
Good afternoon. Nice to see everyone. This year we celebrate the 14th year PAVE has awarded a Rising Star. This award was introduced to the industry by our company's founder, Nancy Jackson, and Moretta's VP PAVE Gala, to recognize those individuals under 40 who's a proven innovator and leader and whose talent, vision, and implementation will inspire retail in the years to come. This year's Rising Star has also shown the ability to pivot, stay inspired, and inspire others while navigating the current state of retail and design.
Today, retailers, designers, and industry suppliers are invited to nominate a rising star who not only embodies those qualities, but will also continue to stay involved in giving back to the industry, into the design industry throughout their career. With that said, ASI is very proud to be sponsoring the Tiffany Star Awards.
3 finalists for 2021 are Aaron Vandenhevel, Associate, Callison, RTKL, Emma Morgan, Design Director, Tiffany & Co., and Macy Hilliard, Associate Creative Director, Big Red Rooster, a JLL company.
We are honored to recognize Aaron Van Havel from Towson RTKL as the first finalist.
So my journey actually started 7 years ago as a PAVE student winner, where my sign up and was displayed at Global Vegas. And it's just been a great journey past 7 years. So much help from PAVE, talking to Dash in Vegas. The second I told him that I was wanting to get into the retail industry, he connected me to all the people he could. From there, I was able to connect with Allison, Cindy, and look back.
Now we would like to recognize Macy Hilliard from Big Red Rooster, a JLL company, as the second finalist.
Thank you guys so much. I'm from a really tiny town in South Georgia that none of you have ever heard of. So the fact that I'm here in New York, just, you know, celebrating with my boss, who's a great person, and have worked at such an amazing company for, 9 years, Big Red Rooster, a small but mighty agency. Just really proud to work there and really grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
And PAVE's 14th annual Rising Star recipient is Emma Morgan, Tiffany & Co.
Thank you. This is a huge surprise. I wasn't prepared to speak, so I really appreciate this honor. It means a lot. And I'll add another box to my collection. Thank you so much.